What is up, everyone? Now, you may have heard the expression that there's nothing more expensive than a cheap used BMW. And now that may be the case for sure, but there are some models out there that can be a great value. I mean, the thing about BMWs is they do have a high depreciation. So if you can get a decent one that's reliable, you can really get a lot of car for your money. So that's basically what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk about the best and worst engines BMW has made, and what you should stay away from and what you should look for if you're looking to buy a used BMW. So let's start with one of the worst engines BMW has made in recent times, and that's going to be the N54. This was made between like 2006 to 2010 in the 335s, as well as like 2007 to 2010 in the 135s, the 535s. You're going to find them in some of the X6s around that time frame, as well as the 2009 to 2016 Z4 35is. This was a 3-liter twin turbo inline 6 engine. It had forged internals, so like on paper it sounds like a great engine, but in reality it really wasn't. This was the first gen N54, and it was BMW's first time turbocharging a production engine. So they it seems like they had a lot to learn with that one. Some of the common issues you're going to find with those were oil leaks from the filter housing, coolant, mixing with engine oil, which, that forbidden chocolate milk is never good. You're going to get brittle hoses from heat soak, failing water pumps, thermostats, and there's a very common issue with the wastegate rattling, particularly on startup. I believe there was also a class action lawsuit regarding the high pressure fuel pumps on that engine, which I think BMW ended up extending the warranty to 10 years. Bottom line, stay far away from any vehicle with the N54. It definitely not going to be worth the money. Stay away. Next up, we're going to talk about the N47 diesel. This is another one that you absolutely want to avoid. At first glance, it seemed great. It was efficient. It was torquey, but it had a really nasty flaw. The biggest flaw on these engines was the timing chain. Now, the timing chain was mounted on the back of the engine up against the firewall, and it tends to stretch prematurely. And also, they used plastic chain guides, which over time end up cracking, splintering. Those pieces can end up in the oil pan, which then gets picked up by the oil pickup tube. You're going to lead to, oil starvation and essentially catastrophic engine failure if it gets bad enough. You're going to see noisy startups, misfires, and again, since it's at the back of the block, replacing it means pulling the whole engine out. So you're talking many thousands of dollars in repairs for this. It could have easily been avoided, but again, if you're shopping for BMWs and it has an N47, I would stay away. Now, next up, you're going to want to stay far away from any V8 powered BMW. This is going to be basically anything that ends in like a 50i, 750i. I think there's some X6s with the 50i. Anything that's V8, although they can be monsters, but the issues and the maintenance costs on these are just going to be astronomical. They're going to drain your wallet. So I would highly advise staying away from any V8 powered BMW. The coolant crossover pipes are buried so deep that you basically have to tear half the engine apart just to replace them. They've had lots of timing chain issues, rod bearing failures, issues with the throttle actuators, not to mention oil consumption. Oil leaks and consumption have been a big issue with BMWs over the years. The old V8 M3 was an absolute ripper. I'm not going to deny it, but unless you got the money to burn, it's going to eat you alive with the upkeep on that. Performance is great, but the maintenance that goes along with it stay away. So after all the issues with the N54, BMW did replace it with the N55, and they made a lot of improvements. That's currently what my daily driver is. I think I said that in the beginning of the video. I have a 2017 X5. The N55, to me, it's rock solid. You know, basic maintenance. I do oil changes every 3,000 to 5,000 miles with a good synthetic oil. I use liquid moly. I'm up to 200,000 miles. I did have the water pump replaced under a recall. Another thing to look out for on these BMWs is they do use an aluminum oil pan, but a steel drain plug. And what can happen is if you get an oil tech that tightens it down too hard, they can easily strip out the pan. I made a video retapping my oil pan. Not a big deal, but it's a very common issue on a lot of the BMW. I think almost all the BMWs. So yeah, but I highly recommend the N55. Some people might disagree with me, but you know, that's fine. But to me, that's a solid engine. If you are going to get a vehicle that has the N55, I would stick with a model that is like 2015 and newer. I think some of the earlier ones had some rod bearing failures, so you definitely don't want to deal with that. But yeah, N55, good to go. Now let's talk about two of the best engines that BMW's ever built. We got the B48, which is a 2-liter. It's a turbo 4-cylinder. This is equipped on most vehicles that end in 20 or 30i. You know, like a 330i, 530i. And the years are going to be from like 2015 to 2023. Very solid motor. We're also talking about the B58, which is the 3-liter turbo 6. You're going to find those in pretty much any vehicle that ends in 40i from like 2015 to 2023. For example, the M340i, M440i, those have the B58. That's a very solid engine. If you're not sure on what engine the vehicle you're looking at has, make sure you look it up. But if it has a B48 or a B58, I would highly recommend buying them if you can get a good deal. Basically, these engines change the game. They have more power, more efficiency, and most importantly, like I said, they were way more reliable. They were paired with the ZF 8-speed transmission, which is like bulletproof, rock solid. And, you know, these cars are not just fast, they are actually reliable. Consumer Reports and JD Power even backed this up. From 2018 onward, BMWs with the B48 or B58 are consistently ranked among the brand's most reliable. And that's really saying something. So let's talk a little bit on what was improved on the B48 and B58s. One thing was they switched to mechanical water pumps instead of the electric ones. They had a lot of issues with the electric water pumps. Another thing that they worked on was heat encapsulation. This really helped keep temps stable. You know, a big problem with BMWs is these engines, especially the turbocharged ones, get extremely hot, which is going to lead your plastics to cracking, things like that. Another big one, they reinforced the internals for more durability, and they had stronger fuel systems and updated cooling packages. The oil filter housing is still a problem. There are rare cases of B58 oil pump failures, but compared to the N54s, these are a night and day difference. So if you are shopping for a used BMW, don't overthink it. You know, stick with the N55, the B48, the B58. You want to go with something, you know, 2015, 2016 or newer. And if you do that, you're actually going to get that mix of performance and reliability that I think BMW owners have been chasing for a long time. So until next time, guys, I'm DC5 James, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.